I came across a video on Instagram yesterday about someone here in the UK who had applied for about 200 jobs in accounting and finance and hadn't had any luck. They had a degree in finance and economics from a good university, but despite applying for hundreds of jobs, they hadn't had any responses. They had a few interviews, but no offers. And it really got me thinking, what is the current state of the accounting market at the moment? And if I was to go back to that position, what would I be doing and what would I be teaching myself to best prepare myself to get a job and to really make myself stand out? So if you are new to the channel, my name is Callum. I'm a chartered accountant here in London, UK. And I got my start back in 2021 with a training contract at a firm here in London, and I've progressed ever since. I'm not with that firm anymore, but I'm doing pretty well in my career currently. So if I was to go back to a recent graduate's position, someone that has just done a degree in accounting or finance, or even something unrelated, and I wanted to break into accounting, which is a bit harder nowadays than it was when I got my start, because there's the rise of AI, we've got offshoring, we've got the increased competition. There's a lot of factors that play into the job market. And unfortunately, right now, from what I've heard from speaking to different people, it's quite hard to break in and firms aren't hiring as much as they used to. But that doesn't mean that you can't find a job, you can't get a job. And really, there's a few things that I would start doing now and during your application process to give yourself the best chance of securing a contract and finding a position that is both fulfilling for you and really gets your foot in the door, because that's what it's all about. So I just want to talk about, firstly, the different routes into accountancy and how they might play out for you if you are a recent graduate or a school leaver, because there's a few different ways you can actually get in nowadays. So if you're a graduate from university, then a lot of the large firms offer graduate schemes that are specific for you, where you effectively go straight into studying for the ACA qualification or the ACCA if you go down the audit accountancy route, or the CTA if you go down the tax route. Now, this is obviously how I got my start, and it takes a bit of time to find a training contract nowadays. I think I'd applied for several before I got my contract back in 2021. But firms are still hiring. You just need to stay on top of when it is they are looking to bring people on and the sort of hiring periods for new accountants, which is usually around about September, August time, but I believe there is another hiring round that takes place in some firms in January time to get people up to speed for busy season. So you can either go down obviously the graduate route, which I touched on, and there's also the school leaver route, which if you are a school leaver, obviously, just on your GCSEs or your A levels, there are ways to break into accountancy at that route, but most of them won't let you go straight into the ACA like a graduate would. You had to go through the ATT or AAT route, which are effectively like your entry-level accounting qualifications you can get here in the UK. And they lead quite nicely into the ACA if you do decide to pursue accountancy and stay in this career. So when it comes to actually getting a training contract, what I would do is I would just have a list of the largest accountancy firms and I just start working my way down. So start with the big four, the top 10, the top 20, 30, and just see when they hire and what jobs they have going, because some of these places advertise quite heavily on their websites and others are a bit more low key. But they all seem to have a career section. So when I got my start, I just had a Excel sheet with all the different names for the firms and just whether I sent out an application or not. So dust up your CV. No one's expecting you to have a ton of experience if you are an entry-level accountant. Just get something out there, get it together and begin sending them over. There's also the speculative approach you can take, where a lot of firms that don't really actively hire roles sometimes will just take people on. So the smaller firms generally tend to do this, where they take people on a more capacity basis. If they need someone at the entry level, then they may post about it on LinkedIn or they may put it on their website, but obviously they don't have the brand name and the recognition, so they don't get as much traffic. And that also means they probably don't get as much applications as some of the bigger companies would. So what I would do is I just look around at smaller firms in your area as well, see which ones offer training contracts to do the ACA or the AAT, because that is very important and it's a very good idea to get yourself a professional qualification. It'll benefit you so much more in the future. So take a look around, see what firms are near you, send out speculative emails, connect with the partners on LinkedIn, and really just try your best to get seen and get an interview and get your foot in the door. That's really what it is all about. It's getting that initial conversation going. Now, there's certain skills that employers are going to look for in their new accountants, and it's obviously changing an awful lot over the past couple of years, definitely since I got my start, with things like AI and new technology and data all coming about. It's no surprise that firms really want a tech-savvy accountant when they are hiring. So what I would do is I would brush up on my Excel skills, maybe see what courses are about on YouTube or LinkedIn or course sites like Udemy, and get familiar, because as an accountant you spend pretty much all your days in Excel or in various different softwares, which do take a bit of getting used to. But if you can give yourself that head start and showcase to employers that you have that basic knowledge in Excel, it's going to benefit you so much more and definitely make you stand out. I'd also say you need a willingness to learn and also an aura about you that you're willing to put in the hard work, because working a job and studying a professional qualification is really not easy. It takes a certain type of person and a certain type of character to put themselves through that and be willing to stick the ride and come out the other side. So being able to show someone that you are invested 100% into the role and into the qualification, and you are willing to put in the time and put in the hours that it takes to study, and those sacrifices that you just have to make in those first few years as an accountant to get through your qualification. But everyone knows that it's really just part and parcel of the job. And once you're out the other side, it's a great feeling. So be willing to show people that you are fully committed to the process and you're willing to put in the work that's required to get that qualification. I'd also say that an analytical mind and having an attention to detail is so important. I know it's quite cliche to talk about attention to details and having an analytical mind in a job interview, but if you can demonstrate some of the things you've done to showcase that in a real world setting, whether that's through courses you've taken at university or projects you've worked on or whatever it is, ways that you can show that you have an analytical mind and just ask good questions, it really does make you stand out. At least when I got my job, one of the traits that they said they were impressed when they spoke to me on was my analytical mind and my attention to detail and just some of the questions that I asked in the interview. Rather than them just interviewing me and asking questions, I made sure to make it a conversation. I asked them a lot of questions too, and really drilled into whether or not this was a company I wanted to work for as well, because ultimately it's a two-way street. There's also the communication aspect of being an accountant. Nowadays, more than ever, especially early on, you are going to get exposure to clients more than you think you are. So rather than just sitting behind Excel, really try to show that you are a human being, if that makes sense, rather than just a Excel wizard and you can't speak to people. Being able to communicate clearly, write effective emails, present topics, and demonstrate that you can actually communicate effectively with clients and in a professional setting is going to help you stand out an awful lot when it comes to securing an accounting role too. So that's just been a bit of an off the dome video about accounting and breaking into accounting. I hope you found it somewhat helpful. If you have, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you around in the next video.